Yo guys, PUNKRAT with a special video for you today. So if you watched my video about my home server of Medivh, the guild Fury and Leia, and how she unfortunately passed away back in 2007, where I covered the forum post of her son looking to get some information, looking to kind of get some closure about her and her guild and her guildmates back in the old days of World of Warcraft. I mentioned the leader of that guild, which was the first Scarab Lord, the World First Scarab Lord back from 2006. His name was Kalahad. I actually got in touch with him last weekend. We scheduled a podcast style interview for you guys. I'm uploading two versions of this conversation. This is going to be the condensed version, and I'll also upload the unedited podcast as well if you guys want to check out the full conversation. So this one, as I just stated, is going to be the edited version where I go over all the little snippets from our conversation where we talked about World of Warcraft history that only someone like Kalahad would actually know. It was an absolute blast from the past to reminisce about the good old days with an actual vanilla icon. So just a little backstory, but Kalahad, as I stated earlier, was the first ever Scarab Lord, and we as a server, Medivh, were the first to open the AQ40 gates. And also, Kalahad's guild Fury achieved the most world firsts in vanilla. They had 11 world first boss kills in the game back then. So we talked about so many interesting things, but let's keep this video to all of the insider information that we went over in our conversation. First, we talked about Molten Core and how Fury actually lost the race to Ragnaros to Ascent, which was a horde side guild on our server that got the world first kill on Ragnaros by abusing the Tauren hitbox to avoid the knockback mechanic on Ragnaros, which was actually a bug back then before it got fixed. So the world first Ragnaros kill was actually a bug abuse in a certain way. And I find it really interesting to talk about Tauren hitbox when that's been a really a big point of contention within the community lately over melee leeway and just Tauren hitboxes in general.
So, but then when it comes to Rag specifically, I think, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe we were either the first or second Alliance guild. And why that's semi-important is back then when he was first killed, there was a bug, a hitbox bug with Taurens, that they were actually able to stand out of range of his knockback Diagro. So you didn't have to worry about off tanks or your melees getting killed while your tank's flying across the room. Which was an important part of the fight, but not the most important part. So, how much that really mattered, it's hard to say. But that was out there, so I don't even know if anybody even used it.
I think it's pretty important, and I think it also draws to a point that the classic community has been up in arms about of melee leeway, especially on Tauren hitboxes. And I actually came prepared, guys. And I have this video here from Ascent's actual first world kill. And if you guys see, their main tank is right here, the Tauren. And he straight up doesn't even have a shield on, and I don't even know if he's taking strikes, but he's just sitting there with a two-hander whacking the boss. And essentially what Kalahad's talking about is the boss has a kickback mechanic that happens, I think, every 15 seconds, 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, probably 20 seconds, something like that. So all of the melee have to make sure that they're, I think, 8 to 10 yards or something away from the boss. And the Tauren hitbox was so massive against Ragnaros that he could literally just stand there without even having to worry about getting knocked back. So that's I think that's a really interesting, little anecdote that you have from back in the day. Now in Blackwing Lair, he had so many interesting stories. He spoke about how GMs were playing with things, actually tuning the bosses during their world first push in Blackwing Lair, and how they were in constant communication with game devs and game masters back then when progressing through things. It was almost like they were beta testing during the world first push.
There's something one of the GMs said that
game masters, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sent us off into a corner that we never got out of. Same thing for Patchwork, actually. Freaking Geoffrey Caplan on that one.
Okay.
He told. Sorry to get off.
No, that's awesome. I mean, everyone knows who Geoffrey Caplan is, anyways. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was actually the main person I worked with back then. I have hundreds of emails back and forth to and from him. But he said something about Patchwork that sent us to try tanking him with hunter pets. I can't remember what it was.
You mean the hateful strikes?
It was something with the hateful strikes. It's something he said that we tried hunter and warlock pets, and let me tell you, that did not work.
Yeah, I could imagine.
That was a freaking disaster. Yeah, he never really helped much. I think he hurt a lot more than he helped. But
so that was a pretty common thing where you guys were constantly in contact with game masters and with actual devs, apparently.
Yeah, so see what happened with Blackwing Lair is um, the the Blizzard didn't anticipate people killing the first two bosses as fast as they did, so the rest of the zone was not ready. And
Really?
so when we killed Vale, our gate opened properly, and promptly after that, they broke the gate. They disabled it, so when everybody else killed Vale, their gates would not open. So everybody else was stuck there, and a few people were like exploiting like a dual fear bug to fear people through it.
Right.
But then GM started kicking them out of the zone. So we actually had a GM show up and tell us that we had to, because he just assumed that we did the same thing, that we had to
get out of there.
Leave the zone. And I said, our gate's open. You can go look at it. And he did. And about 20, 30 minutes later, I'm guessing he went and talked to some other people. He came back and said we were fine to keep going. So that's part of the reason why we got pretty much all of the Blackwing Lair first, is we were the only ones in there.
Really?
So that's in part because I'm pretty sure we actually killed Vale first, even if that says Ascent is on there first. If they killed it before us, I'm guessing their gate would have opened, but everybody was killing it within 30 minutes of each other. It's really hard to know who exactly did it first, but
right.
That's
so it was on like the first day it released, and then boom, people were getting World First immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what strategy did you guys use on Razorgore, out of curiosity? Do you remember?
I remember a lot of kiting. That's about it.
Okay, so you're doing hunter kiting.
Probably. The bosses in Blackwing Lair changed so many times that I honestly couldn't tell you what we did day one. It wasn't very difficult, though. I can tell you that much.
Okay. And
then
yeah, go ahead.
Then Vale was also, I think that one might have taken us a few attempts. Remember, we had to make some new mods for that one, so that took a little bit of time, but not terrible. All the bosses were way undertuned first day.
Mods as in add-ons?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys were developing your own in-house add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. It was a different time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and like really that's what appealed to most of us, is having no idea what's going to happen. What this boss does, what this boss drops. Like none of that was known.
Yeah, now you get access to PTR. You have all the guilds that are literally farming the raid before it actually releases. And then it releases on day one, and everyone just blasts right through it. Kind of a farce, honestly.
Yep.
And there's also data mining, too. So it's like, even if Blizzard wanted to keep it secretive, they would have to like keep the actual code of all the bosses secretive, and no PTR, have an extremely close PTR with like NDAs and stuff that people are signing. Honestly, I think they should do things like that, but yeah, it's kind of a shame that the mystery is gone. Yeah,
and like that was a big part for me, really. I mean, I came from EverQuest, and that's how EverQuest was, and that's also like I believe you referenced in one of your videos that there's like almost no videos of Fury, and
right.
That's because that's how I ran the raids. I told people not to video things because like that's how things were in EverQuest. Everything was a contested world boss. You had no instancing. I think they do now, but back then you didn't. And it was about keeping your strategies and all the information to yourself, because you're competing with in that game more so directly. You're competing with other guilds.
Right. Right.
But back to Blackwing Lair. So early on, we actually had a number of devs in the guild, such that it was, or sorry, not in the guild, in the zone, such that it kept kicking people in our raid out of the zone because it was telling us we had too many people in the zone.
What do you mean? So you had like more than 40 people or something?
Yeah, because we had 40 people, but because the devs were there's like 3 to 5 of them, it kept telling people in our raid that there's too many people in the instance and you're going to be kicked out in 60 seconds.
Okay.
It kept happening over and over and over. And eventually I don't know what they did, but they fixed it somehow.
Yeah, they probably altered the code so that they didn't actually affect the total amount of people. Damn, that's really interesting. So it was like constantly you guys had GMs and devs that were like sort of spectating your World First progress.
For the first bit of time, yeah. And actually they would, not the first day, but I think the second time through, they were actually changing the bosses between attempts. Like Chromagus. There was one night that we fought like 6 or 7 Chromagus versions,
Okay.
and the devs were just like laughing at us because they were severely overtuning it and just completely changing everything. So we have no idea what to expect.
Right.
And which, the guild members were kind of like, okay, this is pretty stupid, but also, kind of cool too.
Yeah, I mean that's something that's a little anecdote of World of Warcraft history that probably not too many people know of, and just the fact that you guys got to experience that, like, I don't think something like that will ever happen again too, like with the whole beta phasing and internal testing that people do nowadays. Like they were basically using you guys as like free QA work in a sense.
Well, yeah, because I think Blackwing Lair was the last raid dungeon that they never put on PTR, so they had, which is also why it was so severely undertuned. And I think that's why going forward they started actually, testing stuff first,
Right.
outside of just internal.
Right.
Because it was such a disaster.
Now with AQ40, we spent a bunch of time talking about this because it's just such a monumental event, and again, like this is kind of the point, is that Kalahad was the world first Scarab Lord. So in AQ40, we spoke specifically about the entire process of opening the gates, how it felt, what it was like, and he actually had this little anecdote of Alex Afrasiabi, who's a game developer who actually used to be a legend in EverQuest before he became a game developer for World of Warcraft, working for Blizzard, and how Alex Afrasiabi actually logged onto an alt within Fury just to experience the opening of the gates, the world's first opening the gates with them back then. That's crazy insider information that you're not going to know about unless you were actually in Fury back in the day. So thanks to Kalahad, we now have access to that little gem of World of Warcraft history.
I know in Fury we used the guild bank to buy a ton of like the mats that were required for it, like the cloths and other stuff. Like I think Leia might have been the one doing that, buying all that stuff off the auction house constantly.
Right.
Just to push it forward. And I'm pretty sure the Alliance side finished before the Horde side, which makes sense because we had a lot more people than they did. So if we didn't, that would have been a little embarrassing.
Right.
But yeah, as far as stories with Ahn'Qiraj, because we were the first, obviously it brought a lot of people to our server, and we actually, there were so many people in Silithus that the GM that was kind of heading up the whole Ahn'Qiraj quest line, he had actually asked me if I could open it later because they feared that the whole server was going to crash just due to the sheer number of people there. And I, promptly alt F4'd and logged on an alt and was talking to him on my alt, and had to tell everybody I was stuck in the queue because, it's just what I had to tell them. But so that guy was actually, his name was Alex Afrasiabi, I believe is how it's pronounced.
That name sounds familiar. He's a Blizzard dev?
He's a Blizzard. I think he still is, but more notably, he was Führer from Fires of Heaven, which was the top guild in EverQuest.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so he was the guy who was a top player on EverQuest and then became a WoW dev.
Yes, Geoffrey Caplan actually was too, but he was from a different guild.
Okay.
And so Alex was actually playing one of our officers' alts during the raids because he wanted to experience the quest, the whole opening that he spent so much time on. And so it was a little bit funny, like, in the raid and in guild, people were kind of at points, trash talking and criticizing crap, and I'm just kind of laughing because he's in the raid and guild reading it, which they don't know that. Only me and my one officer knew that he was there.
Okay. So he wanted to experience the raid, or at least the opening to the gates?
Yeah, the whole world event that was going on there. Oh, yeah. I remember. They actually they had what they refer to as all hands on deck at Blizzard that night.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's literally every employee, but everybody in the office was there, like watching it. They sat on the big screen. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I'm guessing some huge TV.
Some like conference room, yeah.
But I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And so all of Blizzard was sort of watching Medivh, like in the momentous occasion of opening the gates, and sort of following along. And you had Alex Afrasiabi, who was literally playing a character in your guild just to experience it.
Yeah,
that's
terribly
crazy.
geared mage. Yeah,
that's crazy. That's crazy. He didn't raid with you guys in AK40 though, I assume.
No, we never had any devs or GMs raiding with us, to my knowledge.
Okay.
I mean, if one was a member at some point, they never let me know that. So.
And out of curiosity, how exactly did it work with you actually getting the Scepter of the Shifting Sands? Was that a decision that was made between you and Ascent, or was it because you guys had like done most of it and you were automatically prioritized by the system? I assume that's probably not how it was. Was it actually a decision to give you the Scepter?
No, so they could have made one and we could have made one. The reason they didn't is part of the quest line required clearing Blackwing Lair in under 6 hours, I believe it is.
Okay.
There was a time limit on how, from like first entry or first boss kill to killing Nefarian, and however many weeks they had to do it, they were never able to complete that specific part. That's my understanding anyways. That's what I was told. I don't know if that's 100% true. But if they had completed that, then they would have had a Scepter too, and they would have gotten a Scarab Lord as well.
It would have been double Scarab Lord?
Yeah, I think you had 12 or 24 hours after the gates opened. If you had a Scepter, you could also get the title and the mount. Well, not the title right away.
Well, yeah.
But when we were doing it, we actually didn't know that there was any sort of reward. We thought it was just part of the opening of the gate. So, I knew, okay, well, I'm always going to be at all the raids. I'm going to be there all the time. I'm going to collect all this stuff just to make sure that we don't do a boss and whoever is not online to collect it,
Yeah. That only makes sense.
I felt a little bad when there ended up being a reward for it.
You shouldn't feel bad at all. You deserve it. I feel like it would be wrong if anybody but you got it, to be completely honest.
Well, I think, if I recall, it was shortly after I made the awful decision to make a Sulfuras, which made absolutely no sense. But it was a terrible weapon, and nobody else really wanted it, I don't think. So I was already feeling a little bit like a jackass for doing that, because I'm a tank. A little bit, how do I need a two-handed legendary weapon for,
And you don't PvP.
No, well, I did a little bit, but, not really.
Yeah.
Now, when we spoke about Naxx, there were some really interesting things here that I tied to Kungen's experience during the World First races. So Kungen had a stream a while ago, and you can go check it out. I'll link it in the description, where he was talking about how server transfers affected their ability to get the World First 4 Horsemen and the World First Kel'Thuzad kill. And before, I didn't even mention this to Kalahad, but Kalahad had actually mentioned how, because Medivh was such a massive server back then, it was pretty much the best server, you were unable to actually transfer from another server to Medivh. It was blocked off. You could only transfer off of Medivh. And this affected their ability to recruit cross-server, where other guilds were, making their guild ranks much stronger by picking or poaching players from dead servers to join their guild. And Kalahad talks about that, and he also talks about actually losing members from his guild to join other servers. So it's kind of funny how server transfers not only affected the server community and the game in general, but actually also affected the World First race.
I don't remember it being a huge issue. Now, I mean, we had lag, but it was nothing compared to what we experienced in Naxx. And I think part of that is because of how complex the scripting was with Naxx, combined with how overpopulated our server became from the AQ Gate incident, want to call it that?
Yeah.
And I mean, there was nights in Naxx where we would just spend 2-3 hours staring at a boss, waiting for it to be less than 10 seconds to cast a spell.
Right.
Which makes it hard to progress. So and then you had certain bosses, like the biggest one that I remember. Well, there's two. There was the second boss in the Plague Wing, which I can't remember his name, with the waves, and that with lag was
Gothic the Harvester.
No, I think he was the second in the Death Knight Wing, wasn't he?
Oh, in the Plague Wing.
Before Lotheb. I can't remember his name.
Before Lotheb is Hygen. That's the Hygen dance.
Hygen. Okay, yes.
You mean with the Fell Flame, I guess you could say, that pops up?
Yeah, and that with lag was just
everybody
was falling over dead.
Yeah, you could imagine.
And then the other one was Thaddeus. Every time he did his polarity shift,
Oh yeah.
was that what it was called? Everybody would freeze up for 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then we'd all just blow up and die.
Well, I was watching Kungin. Kungin had this stream like 3 or 4 years ago where he was talking about his days progressing through Nex, and he said exactly that like Thaddeus was borderline impossible. It was an easy boss, but nobody could kill it because anytime the polarity shift happened, there was like the entire, like, not only would their specific Nax ID lag, but everybody else in every other guild progressing in Nax at the same time would just completely freeze up every time Thaddeus was pulled, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty simple, but you have to be able to move.
Yeah,
obviously with that fight. Those were the two main ones that, I mean, Heigen wasn't terribly difficult, so when we caught a break between lag experiences, then we could usually kill him, or we would come in early, because especially when Nax was new, we were raiding by 1 or 2 in the afternoon most days. So we would get the easier bosses out of the way with maybe 32, 35 people in the raid when possible, and try and work on the other ones at night, but then you'd run into the lag. So yeah. Then the next problem we kind of ran into was horsemen. So that's kind of where my philosophy of how I built the guild kind of really hurt us.
Okay.
We very rarely had more than 42, 43 people on a given night.
Right.
I was adamant about not over recruiting because I didn't like having people sitting around doing nothing outside.
Right.
That's just my personal feelings on it. So we didn't have enough. We didn't have enough tanks in the guild.
Yeah.
Like, even if every single one was on, we literally did not have enough. And then you needed either 3 or 5 piece dreadnought for the taunt resist.
Right.
Which I don't remember if it's 3 or 5 or whatever it was. And so then you got to gear all those.
Taunt resist, I think, was 4 or something like that. 4 and then 6 for the shield slime and everything else. I think I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, yeah, it's been forever.
Yeah,
but I know a lot of guilds back then they would actually run 2 different raids because they had enough people to. Well, a lot of them had like 60 to 70 people, so they'd run 2 different raids, both of them with some alts.
Yeah,
like we would have had to run a full raid of alts pretty much.
Right.
So eventually we got around to, I think we had to have people get other tank sets like bear tank or something. I don't even remember, but it was not the best time for us. And by that point we were just kind of burnt out because I think guilds were getting too Kel'Thuzad, or might have even killed them by then. And for us, it was, we're a guild that was used to being at the forefront of everything.
Yeah.
And to spend, nights, weeks, just not being able to do anything because of just a ridiculous amount of lag we were dealing with, it demoralized a lot of people. A lot of people stopped playing. And then, because going back to the AQ thing, we couldn't get server transferred to our server. So once they opened up server transfers, I think was during Nax. I could be mistaken about that.
I think it was Nax. It might have been AQ40, but I'm fairly sure it was Nax.
But Medivh was one of the servers you couldn't transfer to because it was so overpopulated.
Yeah, so you couldn't recruit.
All of a sudden, exactly, you had all these hardcore raiders that don't have top end guilds on their servers that want to transfer, and we're not an option. So they look for the next best option that is available for transfers, and so that hurt.
It's interesting that you say that, because Kungen, again, when I was watching him reminisce about his days in Nax, he said the reason why they got 4 horsemen and the reason why they got Kel'Thuzad faster than anyone else is because there was another top-end guild that broke up on another server, and all of the top warriors and all of the top players from that guild transferred over to his server and joined his guild. And once they merged the 2 guilds, they became incredibly powerful and just stomped through everything.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
And probably one of the coolest things is Kalahad actually told me that Blizzard had given him a fully paid WoW subscription till 2035. So like over 20 years worth of game time during the Blackwing Lair progression days. So he was that much of a legend back then that Blizzard gave him over 20 years of paid game time. So whenever he logs into the game, he never has to pay a subscription ever. It's paid for the next, I guess, now about 15, 16 years. That's funny.
They actually, during Blackwing Lair, they actually comped my account, so it's paid for until like 2035 or some crap.
Really?
That's why I can log on randomly.
So wow. Okay. So that's exactly what I want people to understand, is that you're a World of Warcraft royalty. Like, and even Blizzard admitted it. Blizzard gave you a fully paid subscription until 2035.
Yeah, it was actually until 2030 originally. Then at some point they screwed something up, and like they wanted to start billing again. And I shot over an email, and then they fixed it and kicked out to 2035. So
what about expansions?
I got another 16 years.
What about expansions?
No, I don't get those. I gotta buy them if I actually want them.
Oh, okay. Still though, man, that's a lot of money that you're saving on over the years. That's crazy. I wonder if Kungan has the same.
I would assume so. I'm guessing.
Okay, now in respect to the video that led up to this whole thing where I covered Leia, Medivh, and Fury, and Leia's son, now that actual forum post that Leia's son made, Kalahad did actually try to reach out to the guy, unfortunately to no avail. But if we can, as a community, get in touch with the guy somehow, like find him on some sort of gaming community, because I know he does play games, just doesn't play World of Warcraft. Or, if he sees this video, pop up in the comments section, dude. We can link you up with Kalahad and get you some closure on your mother's World of Warcraft days. And I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking about that. There were so many comments about connecting them on the actual original video. So let's try to get that done as a community. That would be absolutely awesome. It's maybe a bit of a stretch, but if anybody could do it, it's us, right? You that didn't know of you previously know of you because of this forum post that I covered in the video that I made. So we have Leia's son, who actually made the forum post saying that he was reaching out to members of Fury. Did you ever end up reaching to her son?
So he posted on the general forums, and then somebody sent him to the Medivh forums. So then he posted on the Medivh forums as well.
Okay.
And I saw it, I don't know, maybe a few weeks after he had posted it, because I don't frequent them all that much. And I actually posted on there, left my email address, and said that he could feel free to reach out to me. I said, I don't know how much I could really help him, but I'd be more than happy to. But he hasn't emailed me as of yet, and that was a few years ago. So
yeah, 2015.
I'm guessing he never went back and checked it after maybe a few days or something.
Okay.
So unfortunately, no, I haven't been able to connect with him.
All right. Well, Rathorek, if you're watching, leave a comment, and hopefully we can get you in touch so you can, maybe he was really interesting in just anecdotes and memories, and hopefully he sees this video because we've gone over a bunch of them, right? Yeah. So hopefully somehow this can get to him through the Google algorithm, right? Just like my video got to you. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was actually so much fun to rekindle with Kalahad and go over the old days and, our server pride back from Medivh, and, really hear actually all of the insider information, a lot of things that I wasn't aware of that were going on back then, which I think is, probably the coolest part of our conversation. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed this one. And I really urge you to go watch the entire conversation, because I didn't really cover everything here, and to get the whole thing within context would probably be a lot better if you went and watched the full podcast. So the link is also in the description, or you can check my channel. You'll see there's the fully unedited podcast, and go check it out, give it a look. And I really hope you guys enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it with Kalahad. And a huge shout out and a huge thanks to Kalahad for being a good sport and jumping on board with this one. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to him. And again, if you guys want more content like this, I'm really pushing to cover more stuff with old vanilla legends and stuff like that. And if you guys really enjoy this type of content, then make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, of course. Join the notification squad by hitting the notification bell. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.